To help make core rules and expectations clear, many colleges and universities have developed a guiding document called a Code of Student Conduct, or alternately, a Student Code of Conduct. Codes of conduct lay out expectations and standards of behavior for on-campus living and learning. They set out the rights and responsibilities shared by all students and other members of the campus community. To accompany these codes, the institution will typically put in place processes for dealing with violations, such as hearings and, if necessary, sanctions. It's typically expected that you, as a student, will make yourself familiar with the student code of conduct that governs your school. So I really recommend looking online or asking around for more information. It's also important to remember that federal, provincial, and municipal laws also apply on university campuses, and so do all of the relevant human rights codes that govern our wider society. Our society is changing, and our universities and colleges are a part of that change. In fact, higher education often leads the charge in terms of social change. For this reason, a lot of the types of behavior that Hollywood tends to associate with campus life are no longer considered acceptable. Codes of student conduct, along with the laws and norms of our wider society, set out standards that push back against the exclusive boys will be boys culture that once dominated some campuses. This often created a toxic climate that fostered binge drinking, hurtful pranks, misogyny, hate speech, and exclusion. In addition to a learning environment, your campus is still a place to party, meet people, have fun, and be creative. It's just important to be aware of the limits of what's acceptable so that your learning and living experience leaves a positive legacy, both for you and for others. In the classroom, it's important to avoid having a negative impact on the classroom dynamic, either by preventing the instructor from being able to accomplish teaching goals, by impeding the learning of others, or by creating an atmosphere that others find personally hurtful. Universities and colleges aim to make their learning environments what we call positive spaces, where people are free to express their ideas and individuality thoughtfully, honestly, and within an environment free of bullying or oppression. To help with that, there are a few obvious things that you should avoid. When encountering people who have different lifestyles, fashion senses, cultures, abilities, identities, ideas, or tastes than you, aim to treat them in the way that you think they'd wish to be treated. Avoid sharing mocking whispers or sarcastic glances with your friends. And of course, don't make racist, classist, sexist, homophobic, or transphobic jokes or use language or generalizations demeaning to others. Try not to make presumptions about people's lives, identities, and experiences. Again, try not to speak as if your own experiences, privileges, and points of views are universal or normal. And don't avoid, exclude, or disengage from people on the basis of these differences. People who study oppression call these microaggressions, and while they might seem very minor, they can add up to create a climate that feels exclusionary, hurtful, and distracting. Speaking of distraction, keep in mind that the reason you and others show up to class is to listen, learn, and engage. So try to avoid distracting yourself and distracting others. That includes other students, staff, and instructors. Especially in larger lecture halls where the lecture is like a performance, students sometimes forget that the instructor is able to see the individuals in the big crowd. In fact, to do a better job, instructors often try to monitor how people are responding, whether they're finished taking notes on the last point, and whether they look confused. In other words, unlike a movie screen or a television that doesn't watch you back, your instructor can and does notice what you're doing. Instructors are alive and present, and they even have human feelings. You may have heard stories about famous actors performing on Broadway who stopped the show to call out a thoughtless or disruptive audience member. You'll rarely, if ever, have that happen in the classroom. But nevertheless, you should try to avoid behavior that's distracting or disrespectful, both for your instructors and for fellow students. And so, try to avoid using electronics in a distracting way. Your instructor may not be able to see your game or news feed or video, but your fellow students can, and so can any TAs sitting behind you. It's common to feel tired or grumpy, especially in early morning classes, but try not to give off a disengaged, bored, or annoyed form of body language. Also, avoid arriving late wherever possible. So try to structure your course schedule and personal schedule to avoid putting you in a situation where you'll chronically have to arrive to class late or leave early. Of course, if you do need to come or go during class proceedings, try to avoid being disruptive as much as possible. In fact, many instructors will appreciate you touching base about unusual arrivals or departures.